I'm pretty excited about essay number 68. It's called Cultivation of the Mind. We just finished the fourth installment of Travels in the Holy Land. That was essay number 67 here in our book American Miscellany by Harriet Martineau. And this book was published in 1865. It's a random collection of essays. And we are now on essay number 68 on page 157. So let's see what they thought about cultivation of the mind 160 years ago. Cultivation of the mind. It has sometimes been thought that the cultivation of the mind would be an injury to those who obtain their livelihood by manual labor, that supposing every man, be his occupation what it may, were to have his mind highly cultivated, it would render him uneasy in his lot. Nothing can be wider from the truth. A single word will explain it, and that is, that as you raise men toward equality in intellect and education, you bring them near actual equality, and the distinctions of property and occupation will sink away to nothing. Was Washington any less respected when he became a practical farmer than when at the head of the nation? No cultivated intellectual man can be degraded by his employment. It is the mind that makes the man, and that makes one man equal to another. And if we were to solve the problem how to make a whole community contented, we would raise them as near to an equality in education as possible. The two best educated nations on the face of the earth are, it is supposed, Denmark and the United States. The government of the one is despotism, and that of the other, its opposite, republicanism. And yet the inhabitants of these two countries are probably the best contented of any in the world. An educated mind has so many resources within itself that it has not to depend upon outward circumstances for happiness. A man with a cultivated intellect would feel neither disgrace nor uneasiness to have you find him at the anvil, nor would you, if you had a mind rightly educated, respect him of any the less. I well recollect, says a celebrated statesman, calling in my college days to deliver a letter of introduction to a gentleman who I found cleaning out his barnyard with his leather apron girded round him, and his team his only helpers. I knew that he had led men in battle in other days, and that he was the honored governor of one of the New England states, and I received a lesson from him by the call, which I trust I shall never forget. The interview made a deep impression on my heart. What must be the contentment of a community who needed so little of government that their chief magistrate might till his own little farm and gain his bread by the sweat of his brow? A very great number of our most valuable inventions and improvements are to be traced to the intelligent men in the common walks of life, and there can be no doubt that in proportion to the intelligence of the mass of community will be the advancement of the world towards its final glory. An intelligent man was a soap maker. He noticed that after all the alkali had been exhausted, the ley would rapidly corrode his copper kettles. Unable to explain this phenomenon, he took some of it to an eminent chemist. On analyzing it, the chemist discovered a new substance, hitherto unknown, that is, the metal called iodine. Further investigation traced this to the ashes, then to the seaweed from which the ashes had been made, then to the ocean, to salt springs, and to all marine substances. A physician in Germany reads the account and recollects that he had heard that burned sponge had been known to cure the horrible, and till then incurable, disease called the goiter, which afflicts whole districts in the south of Europe. He conjectures that it is the iodine in the sponge which effects the cure, and he accordingly applies the iodine to the goiter, and it is found that it is almost an infallible cure. Thus a world of misery is prevented by the shrewdness of the soap boiler. A few years since, the scurvy was the terror of the seas. Whole crews were cut down, and more than once the case had been known, in which the bodies of the dead sewed up in the sailcloth have laid rolling on the deck day after day, because the crew were too much withered to raise them over the nettings and commit them to the deep. Admiral Hoosier, who sailed for the West Indies with 7 ships of the line during the last century, lost all his men twice over during the single voyage, and himself died of a broken heart before he reached home. What a blessing did that man bestow who informed the world that the simple acid of the lemon taken daily would banish this fearful disease. It is now almost unknown, even in the most crowded ships. The discovery of Franklin, a man at that time in common life, by which the lightnings of heaven are brought under the control of man, is an example in point. In France and Germany, where the lightnings are far more destructive than with us, this discovery is valued as it ought to be. We might look at the lighthouse as it was, and as it now is, to see the immense improvements which have been made, and in consequence of which life is saved in multitudes of instances. We might point to the lifeboat, which will now shoot out in the howling storm, and which will ride over any raging of the deep, and show that it is to the intelligence of everyday laboring mechanics that we owe this valuable machine for saving human life. We might mention the sections of Europe where the atmosphere is poisoned by malarious exhalations, and show what an amount of sickness and death has been prevented by quinine, a simple discovery, but one of immense value. It is found that the steel dust which was created by grinding needles, and which is inexpressibly minute, filled the atmosphere and the eyes and the lungs, and invariably caused consumption. Gauze veils of the finest texture were tried, but all to no purpose. No veil could prevent it from entering the eyes and lungs. At last a workman noticed a child playing with a magnet, drawing the needles and steel dust after it, as we all have done in childhood. The discovery is now made. A veil of fine magnetic wire is drawn over the face, and the air is strained pure, all the dust of the steel being attracted and held by the wire, and the labor of grinding needles is now hardly more dangerous than any other business. These examples have been adduced, and they might be greatly extended, and wonders like those achieved by the cotton gin and by vaccination might be dwelt upon almost indefinitely, and not because they are of course new, but because they show that mind and intelligence in the workshop are as valuable and of as much use to the human family as if they were employed in writing folios. One single fact brought into notice, one single phenomenon brought into view, and its explanation obtained may be unmeasured in its results upon the world. Usefulness and respectability come from the union of a good heart and an intelligent mind, and are to be monopolized by no station or occupation. While Scotland sends more of her sons to college in proportion to her population than any other country, 2 of the New England states, Massachusetts and Connecticut, are next to her in this respect, and all New England, and also New York, far before her in giving their children the blessings of free schools. We feel that these schools, far in advance of anything of the kind on the face of the earth, are the glory and the safety of our institutions. We feel that we may safely commit our dear interests of liberty to an educated community. Yeah. Or it could go terribly wrong. We feel that we may safely commit the dear interests of liberty to an educated community, and that next to the religion of the Book of God, there is no safeguard to these institutions. There is no such safeguard to these institutions. Every increase of intelligence in our land gives an increase of confidence in the stability and permanence of our institutions. The objects to be obtained by cultivating the mind, and for the sake of which we have referred to various examples, to encourage others in the cultivation of their minds, are these. Number 1, to possess the power of fixing the mind on any subject wished, and holding the attention upon it as long a time as is desired. This is a very important thing, and he who has acquired this power has done a great work for himself. It cannot be acquired without many and long efforts. Number 2, to fix in the mind the elementary principles of all that pertains to life, such as the principles of science, of business, of politics, government, laws, and religion. Number 3, to give the mind precision of thought. Number 4, to give the power of using language and defining what is meant by such terms as we commonly use when we speak or think. Number 5, to fill the mind with the materials of thought, such as facts which we read, observe, and hear. Number 6, to teach the mind where to go for information, that is, from what sources it may draw. Number 7, to teach the mind how to take up a subject, investigate it, and draw conclusions on which it may rely. Number 8, to cultivate the judgment as to what facts are worth preserving and what are applicable in proving or illustrating a particular subject. Number 9, to cultivate the memory so that the materials which are gathered may not be dissipated and lost as fast as gathered. It may be thought that we have laid out the work of a life here, and so we have intended to do. But if the objects to be accomplished are considered, it will be found that no one of these can be omitted in cultivating the mind in a proper manner. We cannot, of course, have all these objects specially before the mind whenever we exercise it, but they are to be the points to which we should bring the mind in all its wanderings. And in a cultivated mind, these several points will unconsciously receive attention. All this discipline of the mind only looks to a high and noble object, which is to prepare the mind to be the receptacle of light and knowledge, the image of God, and the unseen glories of an eternal state. In all our contemplations of the mind, we look upon it as an immortal existence, and that it is for that state of immortality it is now to be prepared. Education does not mean going to school during our boyhood or going to college in youth, but it means the power to take our mind and make it an instrument of conveying knowledge and good impressions upon other minds, as well as being itself made happy. To cultivate the mind, then, does not mean to read much or little, to converse and to observe, but to discipline it in all ways in our power. We do not expect that every one will discipline his mind so that he can observe and think as well as Franklin. But what then? Is this a reason why we should not do what we can? Neither could Franklin reason like Isaac Newton and bring the universe at his feet. What then? Was this a reason why he should not do all that he could?